Welcome. At the outset, I want to congratulate the Amaravati Society for bringing together such a wonderful scientific program. Additionally, the skit was absolutely wonderful, and I must say that Amaravati Society truly rocks. Thank you so much for that wonderful disposition and this opportunity of being with you here this morning to speak about sudden postpartum collapse. Now, we know that it's a rare but serious life-threatening and incidence which has a diverse range of causes, and maternal survival depends on the etiology, facilities available, and the training and the expertise of those on the spot. So when we define sudden maternal collapse, it is an acute event involving the cardiorespiratory systems and or the brain, resulting in reduced or absent conscious level and potentially sometimes even death. And you have to be aware of this very acute multisystemic affliction. Can women at risk of impending collapse be identified early? And yes, often there are clinical signs that precede collapse and which we must be aware of. And many a times it has been cited that this particular miss by us can be a problem. Antenatal care will be able to help us identify some women and stratify them, but sometimes it can be a sudden occurrence. What has been found, unfortunately, is that substandard care is an identified thing where signs and symptoms were not recognized and acted upon on time. So what are the various differentials that we as obstetricians keep in mind? There can be various shock syndromes, cardiac, cerebral, concealed hemorrhages, postpartum hemorrhage, blood in the abdominal cavity, ruptured level, post-C-section, blood in the chest and aortic dissection, and there are so many other things like drugs and metabolism, especially some drugs which we use, they can be putting the woman at risk of a sudden collapse, and we must be aware of this. Now, the various causes have been wonderfully defined by the RCOG, and these are the causes of cardiac arrest in pregnancy from bleeding to embolism, anesthetic complications, uterine atony, cardiac disease, hypertension, and other like magnesium sulfate toxicity. And if you look at the 4 H's, hypovolemia, hypoxia, hyperkalemia, hypothermia have to be borne in mind. And 4 T's are thromboembolism, toxicity, tension pneumothorax, and tamponade that we have to also remember. Now, obstetrical physiology is going to impact resuscitation, and we are going to have an expert speaking after me who is going to give us all the nitty-gritty of how do you resuscitate a pregnant mother. So there are various issues involved, and we'll quickly go through that. And the first thing that we have to do as obstetricians is usually the emergency management one, wherein does the mother respond to verbal commands? Is she breathing? Is there a heartbeat that tells us about capillary feeling? Clear the airway, coma position or prepare for CPR, attempt diagnosis but proceed with basic life support, and always check that the environment is safe. So if you look at the algorithm, is she responsive? Shout for help is always something that we have to take under. Put her in the left lateral position, assess the maternal condition, perform the obstetric evaluation, the fetal well-being, and review. And always tilt the woman. That was something that I wanted to bring to notice in the drill also which you did. It's important that immediately you must tilt the woman to one side and check her airway and breathing. And the most important thing today, the evidence says that it is important that you even by your single hand or by manually just shift the uterus to the side. Because you can see her in the picture down, it takes away the pressure on the vessels, because it has been found that the typical 15 degrees tilt which used to be given in the past doesn't help much. It has to be 30 degrees, but 30 degrees would not be able to award you to give resuscitation. So it's always better to shift her abdomen away. And then, of course, we have to have the proper positioning, tight seal and ventilate, and this is something that I'm going to leave for my next speaker to discuss to us about. So there are emergency management 2 and 3 will be dealt with the expertise that we usually call from the anesthesiologist or the intensivist. So we have Mrs. IVF who is conceived after treatment of Asherman's due to DNA done for missed abortion, and at 16 weeks of gestation, she went to a local practitioner to take her injections, and the injections that were taken by her were HCG, progesterone, and LMWH at a single go. And after that, she came home and she just collapsed. And when she was found, she was wheeled to a nearby multi-speciality hospital. She was unconscious, she had a thready pulse, a BP was low, and she was intubated. She continued to bleed pervaginally. Suddenly she had PV bleeding, probably DIC. And then when we did an emergency sonography, the fetal cardiac activity was seen. There was no obvious source of bleeding found. She was admitted and the working diagnosis of anaphylaxis was undertaken. Steroids were given to the patient. She was unconscious for 48 hours. MRI was done, which was found to be normal. And after 48 hours, she completely recovered, and probably retrospectively, it must be an anaphylaxis. Be careful when you give medicines suddenly in such big dosages, because patient can have problems. Now we had G3P1 PROM at 39 weeks induced with misoprostol 100 micrograms. After 6 hours, she became 2 centimeters, minimally effaced, mild contractions. Second miso was given, 100 mcg was administered. After 1 hour of that second miso, there was severe pain and bearing down. She started saying that I'm having a lot of pain. After 1 hour, it was found that she had pain and she was fully dilated. So you can see she went into precipitate labor. She was shifted to the labor room, delivered, and collapsed. We ordered the blue code, resuscitated, intubated, and we shifted her to OT, and laboratory we did, and we found that this was her finding on the laparotomy. You can see that this is a uterus, and you can see there were large hematomas. When we opened the posterior pouch, we found that, look at that, there was a bucket handle tear at one side. So she must be having a composition of a hypovolemia, a hemorrhagic shock, along with pain, because there was sudden tear in the uterus. The lesson learned from this patient was that whenever there is any kind of a cervical change or a cervical effacement, please do not administer misoprostol. Misoprostol is only for induction, if at all. It is never ever used for augmentation or anything else. And that is something which has to be remembered, because if the lower segment becomes thinned out or torn, it is impossible to suture it, and you are really going to land in a soup. And this was typically a patient who had all these things happening. Mrs. Shah Bano is a primary gravida, 20 years old, had a vaginal delivery in a private hospital in Daund, seemingly uneventful. After 6 hours of delivery, patient collapsed in the washroom. What do you think this can be? Yes? Can be a vasovagal syndrome many times, or maybe because of pain, or in a patient who is just now delivered. We must always think of, is she bleeding somewhere? She may be bleeding somewhere, and we all are aware of the vasovagal syndrome, but we also have to be looking at the simple things like looking at the pulse, looking at the blood pressure, and always this chart has to be in your mind, because the moment there is any tachycardia, please remember that the patient has already lost 10 to 15% of her blood. And if there is weakness, tachycardia, and sweating, which our patient had, she had already lost 15 to 25% of her blood. And there always has to be a practice of calculating the shock index. Whenever you find that the shock index is less than 0.5, even now the obstetric context is 0.7, you must immediately start resuscitation of the patient and call for blood component therapy. So this shock index and the stages of shock is extremely important to differentiate. Do not ward off all patients just as a vasovagal syndrome. And check PR, BP, fundus, and the PV loss. If the mother has a slow but good volume pulse and she's pink and breathing, put her in the coma position and monitor recovery. If she's hypovolemic, get in 1 to 2 IV cannula as soon as possible and commence resuscitation. Likewise, this was done for the patient in that particular hospital in Daund. 2 PCVs were given in view of moderate anemia. USG was non-conclusive and her hospitalization continued. So what does come to your mind next? Is it sepsis? Can it be sepsis? Because it occurred after some time. Yes, physiological changes in pregnancy. Maybe there are certain changes like increase in the pulse rate, ECG changes, leukocytosis, functional residual capacity, metabolic alkalosis, immunomodulation, lowered blood urea, and implications are it masks hypovolemia, mimics myocardial ischemia, masking leukocytosis of sepsis, rapid onset hypoxia, increased susceptibility, and difficulty in standardization of tests. So it may present without fever or a raised white cell count, can progress very rapidly, and principal obstetric organisms found to are streptococci, pneumococci, and E. coli. What we have to remember is that as obstetricians, we must be able to catch our patients here. And that is called as the SIRS, where you have a clinical infection, where there'll be fever, there'll be tachycardia, tachypnea, leukocytosis, and leukopenia. After that, gradually the patient would progress to severe sepsis and then septic shock. Before that, we should be able to identify. There have been various scores which have been talked about, the SOFA-Q, the SOFA score, but they have not really gone through well in the clinical assessments of this patient. And if the patient is in septic shock, we have to be aware that she requires a multidisciplinary management, and she goes outside the gamut and the periphery of a simple basic obstetric practice. And then, of course, this would be handed over to better practitioners. So after 5 days, a senior gynecologist was consulted, and she referred the patient to us in view of deteriorating condition and need for immediate intervention. And what could it be? Can anybody tell us what it was? Because this senior gynecologist did a pervaginal examination, and she did not feel the uterine fundus. So you can see what it was, and it was, yes, anybody can tell me? Yes, it was a uterine inversion, and since I'm a teacher, I decided to do a laparoscopy and record it laparoscopically first. And we did a repositioning of the uterus under laparoscopy control. I had a surgeon who was helping me to reposition the uterus, because you can imagine after 5 days, the ring is very tight and it is impossible to push in. And we have very delicate wrists because we are women. So this, and I was seeing through a laparoscope, and you can see that the uterus is coming out under vision. And then what we did was, we passed a needle through one of the scopes after it was completely taken, sort of removed. And I know we had a wonderful presentation of uterine inversion in the previous session. And then we passed on a needle, and we injected intramyometrial prostaglandin after that. And the patient did well. So there must be a component of hypovolemia, there can be a component of neurogenic shock, and there can also be some element of sepsis after 5 days of this thing has happened. And you can see that the uterus has recovered perfectly back to its normal, as if nothing has happened kind of a situation. So acute uterine inversion is one of the causes which has to be borne in mind. I'm not going to spend more time here, because we have already discussed this in our previous speaker has spoken about this. Now, Mrs. Nanda came at 2 a.m., a 30-year-old woman, 37 weeks pregnant, with twins, arrives at the hospital. Cervix is 6 centimeters dilated. Patient is in severe pain. Labor is progressing rapidly. Epidural block has been given to you. 15 minutes later, patient is still in severe pain. Then the bupivacaine given in 2 increments. Patient is comfortable. Membranes ruptured spontaneously. 3 minutes prior, patient complained of difficulty in breathing and lost consciousness. Fetal heart rate 90, vaginal bleeding, patient cyanotic, SpO2 64, maternal BP and pulse was not optimal. Code blue was activated, patient mask ventilated with ambu bag and O2, no improvement, CPR was given, intubated, and then she was in asystole. All IV lines were displayed during CPR, epinephrine given via endotracheal tube, IVs replaced with difficulty, no maternal pulse or BP detected, FHR 50 by 60, cervix 8 centimeters dilated. Patient transported to OT while closed chest massage continued and cesarean section was started. Now, delivery of a male infant was done, Apgar was poor, and both the babies had poor Apgars. What could be the possible cause? What comes to your mind? Why did she go into cardiac arrest? She then came out of it. She became stable later on. She was unconscious, went to the ICU. So the possible causes of cardiac arrest can be anything from amniotic fluid embolism, pulmonary embolism, hemorrhage, myocardial infarction, cardiomyopathy, high spinal anesthesia, spinal opioid respiratory depression, or drug overdose or toxicity. What is very important is you have to be very careful when you do the practice of taking the uterus out at the time of C-section. Extremely dangerous practice, because it may cause sometimes a sudden vasovagal and a neurogenic shock, and therefore one has to be careful when you exteriorize the uterus, and traction on the wound edges can increase the risk of also pulmonary embolism of AFE. Now, amniotic fluid embolism is unpredictable, unpreventable, untreatable. And it is because of a disruption of the maternal-fetal interface, which can occur at any time. Even when the patient becomes fully dilated, even when you're applying instruments, there can be the amniotic fluid, along with so many other immunological stimulants entering into the vasculature, giving rise to the cascade of various things. And the first thing that happens is DIC and breathing difficulties. So one has to be careful, and one again has to be careful when you are using misoprostol. Misoprostol is associated with increased incidence of amniotic fluid embolisms when used as a augmenting agent. So be careful, and never forget the Princess Charlotte's death of Wales, destined to be the queen. She had a stillborn child, and she had an obstetrician, Sir Richard Croft, looking after her. The baby died, the princess died, and after that, the doctor could not contain the sorrow, and he committed suicide. So you can remember this always, and it can be a very, very difficult thing to, contain. Now, Mrs. AHA, 46 years, obese, chronic hypertensive, IVF pregnancy with surrogacy, 36 weeks gestation, admitted for breathlessness and feeling uneasy. No antecedent cardiac evaluation was ever done. Never do this. Chronic hypertensive, send her to the cardiologist, do a 2D echo, find what's wrong with her. On admission, collapsed when being shifted from the triage to HDU. While she was being shifted in the wheelchair, she was routed to the operation theater. A crash cesarean delivery was performed. All of us have to be aware of how to do a crash cesarean delivery, because it is a peripartum C-section, usually done to save the woman's life. It's not actually for the baby's life. If the woman is dead, then of course the baby's life. But the woman is still alive. Many times, peripartum C-sections will help her. It is a vertical incision which has to be taken, and you have to have a quick delivery within 4 minutes of a collapse. So there are certain clues which all of us must be aware of. Severe hypertension, convulsions, it can be eclampsia, grand multipara, mismanaged third stage of labor, high spinal, vomiting under anesthesia, previous cardiac complications, collapse after administration of drugs, collapse immediately after delivery, sudden onset of unexplained dyspnea, tachypnea. All these can give us clues of what can be the reason why this woman has collapsed. And I would always promote this particular modified obstetric early warning score, which all of us should practice, because our labors are a dynamic event. So every time you must have these charts made into big displays wherever your pregnant mothers are. And they're simple things that you can see, the reds, the yellows, and the greens. And if you just follow them, there's a scoring which is 1, 2, 3 negative, 1, 2, 3 positive. And then as per the score, you can devise your own patient evaluation algorithm in your own hospitals, which will talk of Muse 1 to 4, increase the frequency of observation and so forth, 5 to 6 or any individual parameter, increase the frequency of observation, inform nurse in charge, and if it is more than 7, then it requires a specialized care and your attention. Likewise, there are obstetric sepsis care pathways, which are called as first hour care duties, which you have to be well versed with. Just looking at certain parameters, they can guide you to identify whether the patient is in sepsis. And these are the various wonderful things which have been made by the RCOG care bundles, which we can follow. And then, of course, whenever you're referring the patient, always follow the policy of what is called as the S-bar reference. In our Lakshya and in our Manyata, we are being taught about all these kind of things. So you have to communicate properly and then refer your patient properly. Thank you for giving me those 18 minutes instead of the 20 minutes. But all the same, I use this last second to tell you that I am Dr. Girija Wagh. I am from the Pune Obstetric Gynec Society. I've been a chairman of the Medical Disorders Committee of FOGSI. And this year in July 2020, I am contesting for the post of Vice President FOGSI. And I request all of you to kindly vote for me online. Thank you.